Hey there, fourth graders. Today's mini lesson is on equivalent fractions, strat number 2, partitioned drawing. Partitioned drawings are your second strategy for equivalent fractions. So go ahead and turn to your next free page. Write this down as your title. After you have, close up your notebook so that you just concentrate through the I do questions, and then you can open it back up and write when we get to we do. Okay. So yesterday, our first strategy was fraction bars. So if I were to ask if, say, the fractions 2/3 and 3/5 were equivalent or not, we check using fraction bars that look like this. And in order to check it, let me turn on my snap. I would look at my whole, and then I would say, all right, I'm going to make 2/3, 1/3, 2/3, and then I'm going to make 3/5, and I'm going to see if the two fractions are the same size or not. They are not. 2/3 appears to be a little bit bigger than 3/5, so those are not equivalent fractions. They're not the same amount. So I would say no, or not equivalent. And if I really wanted to be thorough, I might say 2/3 is greater than 3/5. It's the greater part of 1. So fraction tiles are not always convenient. You may need to decide if fractions are equivalent or not without access to those tiles. And so I want to give you a second strategy for that. So if I want to decide, these are the same ones we did yesterday. If I want to decide if those are equivalent or not, one thing I can do is make a drawing and see if I can change the drawing into the fraction. Let me show you. So 4/8 1/2. I usually start with the one with the smaller denominator. So I'm going to start with 1/2. I'm just going to draw kind of a basic drawing of 1/2. So I'm going to maybe draw a 1/2 like this. And I'll maybe take a highlighter and shade in 1/2. And there you go. Good looking 1/2. And so now what I want to do is I want to see if I can divide this up in a way that's going to turn it into eighths. So usually my first fraction, I kind of split the rectangle that way up and down. So to try to turn it into 4/8, I'm going to make what we call partitions this way. And I'm going to see if I can turn that into 4/8. So to cut it into 8 parts, let's see, that cuts it into 4 parts, 2/4. So that's equivalent to 1/2. And then if I cut each of those parts in half again, this way, now I was able to divide it into 8 parts total. And 4 of them are colored in. Pretty cool, right? So I would say, yes, they are equivalent. 4/8 and 1/2 are the same fraction because I can even undo it and show it to you again. I can start with 1/2 and make partitions the other way. And I can see that I haven't changed the amount that's shaded. I've just cut it into more pieces, more partitions. These are called partitions. All right, let's do another one. 7/10 and 1/2. So again, I like to start with my smaller denominator. Makes this easier for me. So I'm going to draw a 1/2 again. I'll do this. Doesn't matter which way you start. So if I want to make my 1/2 this way, that is okay. And so all I'm going to do, whichever way I start with, I'm going to draw in my partitions in the other direction. So since I made my 1/2 this way, I'm going to draw my partitions up and down. So if I cut this into tenths, let's see if I can do that. think if I do that, now I've got 10 pieces, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I can see that a half is equivalent to 5/10, but it is not equal to 7/10. So I would say no. They're not. All right. And so partition drawings are a really easy way to do these. So find a fraction that is equivalent to 2/5. So that's super easy with the partition drawings. Let's check out what you can do. I'm going to draw 2/5. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let me shade in 2/5. 1, 2. And super easy way with partition drawings. However many pieces I want to cut this into the other way, I'm going to get an equivalent fraction. Watch, I can do that. And my first equivalent fraction is 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 10. Easy. Or instead of cutting it into one piece, or cutting it with one partition, I could cut it with 2. And so in addition to that 4/10 I found, I could also do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 9, 12, 15. So there's 2 equivalent fractions. Or instead of cutting it into 2 parts, or with 2 partitions, I could cut it with 3 and get another equivalent fraction. All I have to do is pick the amount of partitions I want. As long as I cut it into equal parts, I can keep doing this with as many possibilities as I can think of. 8 out of 20. So I can get all the equivalent fractions I want with partition drawings. Pretty neat. Okay. If you have it handy, a second and maybe even a third color would be nice for you to use. It's easier to draw these like I did with lots of different colors. But if you don't have those handy, you can just do darker and lighter or something with your pencil. So open your notebook and let's do these in there. If you want to do these by yourself, be my guest. If you'd rather wait with me, that's fine too. So 3/4 and 5/8 are these equivalent? Let's see. So I'm going to draw the one. That's pretty poor. I even have this tool to help me do this. I don't know why I'm not using it. I usually do a rectangle. You can do these with circles too. Maybe I'll do the next one with circles. So again, I like to start with smaller denominator. And so that's fourths. I'm going to do fourths, cut it in half, and then half again. And 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to partition the other way. Other direction. So let's see. That happens to me sometimes on here. Other direction. I'll use another color. And so if I cut, this is 4 parts now, so if I cut all those parts in half with one partition, I'll get eighths. And I can see that 3/4 is equivalent to 6/8, but not 5/8. So these are not equivalent. All right. Let's do 2/3 and 8/12. Let me draw my rectangle. And again, doesn't matter which way you start. I have a tendency to start by partitioning this way, but you don't have to. So thirds like this. 2/3 looks like this. So again, I start with my smaller denominator, 2/3, and I'm going to partition it the other way. So to get to 12, I'm going to have to cut it. If I cut each of these into 2 pieces, I'll have 6. 3 pieces, I'll have 9. So I'm going to cut this into 4 partitions. Oh, I can't see that orange, sorry. It's better. So that's 6 parts. And if I cut both the 6 parts in half, now I've got 12 parts. And I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of 9, 10, 11, 12 are colored. These are equivalent. I can make the same fraction by just partitioning that. Sure. So these are my favorite. Find an if you get a question that says just find an equivalent fraction to something, man, I don't know if there's a faster way than partition drawings. They're super fast for this. So let's make sixths here. And 2 of them. And now you pick the number of partitions. You want to make an equivalent fraction? If you put in 1 partition, you can write that. Choose like any number of partitions will work. So, how about I'll do 2. Just to pick something. 1, 2. They need to look fairly equal. But if I partition it 2 ways, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 6 out of 18 is one possible fraction that's equivalent. If I cut it into 1 partition, 2 partitions, 3 partitions, doesn't matter. They'll all do. So that's how you use partition drawings to find and identify equivalent fractions. I like it. It's pretty quick, and it doesn't involve needing fraction bars, so that's a pretty handy second strategy to have. If you need to go back and watch the I do or the we do again, you may. If you feel like you have a good understanding of this now, once the we do is in your notes, you're all done. See you tomorrow.